fork scraped against my plate as Dave's laughter filled our dining room. I was trying to tell the kids about my latest handbag design when he cut me off. You know, Caleb, when your mom's handbag thing flops, maybe she can sell tote bags at your school bake sale, he said, grinning like he'd just told the funniest joke in the world. My 13-year-old son smirked. My 10-year-old daughter Emma shrank into her chair. Something cracked inside my chest. I'd been working on Cedar and Stitch for 2 years now. Every rejection letter, every failed loan application, every night spent hunched over my sewing machine in the garage, Dave had mocked it all. But this time was different. This time, he made our children laugh at my dreams. I excused myself quietly, walked upstairs to our bedroom, and opened my laptop. The Shark Tank application I'd started 3 months ago was still saved in my drafts folder. I'd written it during those late nights when Dave thought I was just doing emails. My finger hovered over the submit button. Then I thought about Caleb's smirk. I clicked submit. 3 days later, my phone rang while I was sorting through recycled leather samples in the garage. The caller ID showed a San Diego number I hadn't seen in 5 years. Becca? I answered hesitantly. I saw your social media posts about the handbag business, my sister said. Her voice was softer than I remembered. I know we haven't talked since Mom's funeral, but, Rachel, I want to help. My eyes filled with tears. Becca was a successful graphic designer, and we'd had a terrible fight about Mom's estate. I never thought we'd speak again. I've been following your work online, she continued. Your designs are incredible, but your branding needs work. Let me handle that side. I gripped the phone tighter. Becca, I can't pay you much right now. I don't want money up front. Give me 10% equity when you make it big. When, not if. Someone finally believed in me. Deal, I whispered. Good. Now tell me everything about this Shark Tank application. I told her everything except one thing. I hadn't mentioned it to Dave yet. For the next month, I became a secret CEO. After Dave and the kids went to bed, I'd sneak down to the garage and work until 2 a.m. Becca would email me logo concepts and color schemes. I'd respond with product photos and business projections. My rejection letter from the bank still sat on my desk, a reminder of how unmarketable my sustainable handbag idea supposedly was. Dave had laughed when I showed him that letter. Maybe the universe is trying to tell you something, Rach, he'd said, not looking up from his phone. But the universe had other plans. On a Tuesday morning, while Dave was at the bank and the kids were at school, my phone buzzed with an email that made my hands shake. Congratulations, Rachel Monroe. You have been selected for Shark Tank Round 1 auditions. I read it 3 times before it sank in. They wanted to see my pitch via video call next week. I called Becca immediately. We're in, I whispered. Time to show them what Cedar and Stitch can do, she replied. Dave never asked why I was smiling so much that day. I'm picking up some freelance PR work again, I told Dave over dinner the next week. It wasn't technically a lie. I used to be a crisis PR strategist before the kids were born. Good, he said, cutting his steak. We could use the extra money, especially with your business hobby eating into our savings. Caleb looked up from his phone. Why do you stay up so late, Mom? I smiled, serving Emma more vegetables. Just doing emails, sweetheart. What I didn't tell them was that those emails were actually business plans, pitch decks, video audition scripts. Becca had created a stunning presentation that transformed my garage workshop photos into something that looked professionally shot. The next morning, after everyone left, I set up my laptop in the living room and joined the video call with 3 Shark Tank producers. My heart hammered as I pitched Cedar and Stitch, sustainable handbags made from recycled materials and biodegradable leather. 20 minutes later, they told me I'd advanced to the next round. I hung up and sat in stunned silence in my empty house. Then I called Becca, crying happy tears. 2 weeks later, while Dave was getting ready for work, I noticed him smiling at his phone more than usual. When he left it on the counter to shower, curiosity got the better of me. The text messages were from someone named Kira, a yoga instructor he'd connected with on LinkedIn. Thanks for lunch yesterday. You're so easy to talk to. My husband doesn't really understand my business stuff either. Can't wait for our coffee date tomorrow. My stomach dropped. Nothing physical had happened yet, but the emotional cheating was obvious. Dave was sharing our marriage problems with another woman, making himself look like the victim. I took screenshots of everything and saved them in a folder labeled tax documents. My old PR instincts kicked in. Always document everything. When Dave came downstairs, I was making his coffee like nothing had happened. "Have a good day at work," I said, handing him his travel mug. He kissed my cheek, still smiling about those texts. I waited until his car pulled out of the driveway, then called my round 2 Shark Tank interview scheduler. "I'm ready for whatever comes next," I told them. The Shark Tank pitch boot camp was held virtually, which meant I could participate without Dave knowing. For 3 days, I joined video calls with other entrepreneurs, practicing my presentation and answering tough questions from former contestants. One investor on the call challenged my market research. "How do you know young women actually care about sustainable fashion?" I pulled up my laptop screen full of data. 68% of millennial and Gen Z consumers say they're willing to pay more for sustainable products. Fast fashion creates 92 million tons of textile waste annually. My target market isn't just buying handbags, they're buying a solution to environmental guilt. The room went quiet, then the former shark smiled. That's exactly the kind of answer that gets deals. After the call ended, I got an email that made my hands shake. "Congratulations, Rachel. You've been selected to appear on Shark Tank. Filming is in 6 weeks." I stared at my laptop screen in disbelief. This was really happening. I'd have to fly to Los Angeles and tell Dave I was going to a PR conference. The lies were getting bigger, but so were the stakes. "Rachel's business hobby is actually helping us save money on taxes," Dave bragged to his friend Tom at our neighborhood barbecue. "I can write off all her expenses as losses." I stood nearby, holding a plate of Emma's untouched burger, trying to keep my face neutral. Dave had no idea that Cedar and Stitch was about to turn profitable. He thought he was clever, using my failed business to reduce our tax burden. Tom laughed. "Smart thinking, man. Let her play entrepreneur while you handle the real finances." "Exactly," Dave said, taking a swig of beer. "She'll get tired of it eventually." I walked away before I said something I'd regret. But I made a mental note. Dave had been claiming my business expenses on our joint tax returns without fully understanding what he was doing. When Cedar and Stitch started making money, that little trick of his would become evidence of something much bigger. Later that night, I updated my business files and made sure everything was properly documented under my name only. Dave fell asleep watching TV, completely unaware that his wife was about to become someone he wouldn't recognize. "I'll be in Los Angeles for 3 days for a PR conference," I told Dave, packing my small suitcase. "Some potential client meetings." "Sounds boring," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "Text me when you land." Emma hugged me goodbye. "Bring us back something fun, Mom." "I will, sweetheart," I promised, though I had no idea what I'd be bringing back. The flight to LA felt surreal. I kept my pitch notes in my carry-on, reading them over and over. Becca had created the most beautiful presentation slides I'd ever seen. Clean, professional, and perfectly on brand. At the hotel, I video called the kids for bedtime stories. Dave was already in bed when I called him. "How's the conference?" he asked, yawning. "Productive," I said. "Really productive." The next morning, I put on my best blazer and drove to the Sony Picture Studios lot. As I walked through the security gates, my phone buzzed with a text from Dave. "Don't bore them to death with your handbag stories." I turned off my phone and walked onto the Shark Tank set. It was time to prove him wrong. Standing in front of the sharks felt like stepping into another dimension. The studio lights were brighter than I'd expected, and the tank behind them glowed an eerie blue. "Hi, Sharks. I'm Rachel Monroe from Portland, Oregon," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm seeking $250,000 for 5% equity in Cedar and Stitch, the future of sustainable luxury handbags." I demonstrated my bags, explained my recycled materials process, and shared my sales numbers from the past year. The sharks leaned forward when I mentioned my profit margins. "Your numbers are impressive," Lori said, "but what makes you different from every other sustainable fashion company?" "I'm not just selling handbags," I replied. "I'm selling guilt-free luxury. Every bag prevents 3 pounds of waste from entering landfills, and each purchase funds cleanup projects in developing countries." Mark Cuban's eyebrows raised. What are your projections for next year? I clicked to my final slide, the one Becca and I had worked on until 3 a.m. Conservative projection, $2.8 million in revenue. Aggressive projection, $5.2 million. The sharks exchanged glances. Then Lori and Mark started bidding against each other. When Lori offered exactly what I'd asked for, I accepted immediately. Walking off that stage, I felt like I was floating. 2 months later, I was living the strangest double life. The Shark Tank episode hadn't aired yet, but Lori and I were already working together behind the scenes. Sales had tripled just from her initial social media posts. Dave noticed I was happier, but attributed it to my freelance work picking up. He never asked for details, which made it easier to keep my secret. On a Sunday afternoon, I was in the kitchen making lunch when I heard Caleb gasp from the living room. "Wow, Mom, come look at this." I dried my hands and walked over to where he was sitting with his laptop. Dave was reading the newspaper nearby. "Man?" Caleb's voice was shaky. "Is this you?" On his screen was a YouTube video titled "Sustainable Handbag Founder Gets $250K Deal on Shark Tank." The thumbnail showed me shaking hands with Lori Greiner. The room went completely silent. Dave's newspaper lowered slowly. Emma ran over to look. "Mommy, you're on TV." Dave stood up, his face pale. "Rachel, what is this?" I smiled calmly, leaning against the doorframe. "Told you I was doing emails." We all watched the episode together on Caleb's laptop. Dave sat frozen as the sharks praised my business model and fought over my deal. Emma cheered when Lori said yes. Caleb's mouth hung open through the entire segment. When it ended, the room stayed quiet for a long minute. "You're on Shark Tank," Caleb whispered, like he was afraid to say it too loud. "I am," I confirmed. Dave finally found his voice. How did you pull this off without telling me?" His tone wasn't proud or impressed. It was suspicious, almost angry. "I knew you'd try to talk me out of it," I said simply, "or make jokes about it at dinner." Emma hugged my legs. "You're famous, Mommy." Dave's jaw tightened. "We're going to need to discuss this." "I figured we would," I replied. But what Dave didn't know was that discussion would be happening on my terms now, not his. That night, after the kids went to bed, I checked my phone. 37 missed calls, hundreds of Instagram notifications, and an email from Good Morning America. Everything was about to change. Dave's phone started buzzing during his lunch break the next day. His coworkers had found the Shark Tank clip online. "Dude, isn't this your wife?" His colleague Mike texted, along with a link to the YouTube video. By the time Dave got home, his embarrassment had transformed into anger. "My boss's boss saw that video," he said, pacing our kitchen. "Do you know how this makes me look? Like I don't even know what's going on in my own house?" I was sorting through interview requests at the kitchen table. "Maybe because you don't." "That's not fair, Rachel. You lied to me for months." "I protected my dream from you," I corrected. "There's a difference." Dave's face reddened. "You made me look like a fool in front of people I work with. You did that yourself when you told them my business was a hobby." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. We both knew I was right. That evening, while Dave sulked in his office, I did my first phone interview with Forbes. When the journalist asked about my support system, I talked about Becca, my kids, and my determination. I didn't mention Dave at all. The Forbes article went live 3 days later with the headline, "Mom Builds $1 Million Business While Husband Mocks Her Dreams." It wasn't quite what I'd said, but it wasn't wrong either. The story exploded on social media. Cedar and Stitch started trending. Women shared their own stories of unsupportive partners and hidden dreams. My phone rang constantly. Good Morning America, The Ellen Show, local news stations. Everyone wanted to interview the quiet entrepreneur who shocked Shark Tank. Dave found the Forbes article when a neighbor texted him the link. He stormed into the garage where I was photographing new inventory. "They're making me sound like some villain," he shouted, waving his phone. "I never called you a villain," I said calmly, adjusting my camera lens. "But you let them think it." I looked up at him for the first time since he'd walked in. "Dave, you called my business a hobby that I'd get tired of. You suggested I sell bags at school bake sales. You made our son smirk at my dreams. What would you call that?" He had no answer. That afternoon, Caleb ran into the garage with his phone. "Mom, your TikTok just hit 2 million views." I didn't even know I had a TikTok. Becca had set it up and was posting behind-the-scenes content. Everything was moving so fast. The kids started helping me pack orders after school. Emma would carefully fold tissue paper, while Caleb handled the shipping labels. They were proud to be part of something that was getting bigger every day. "Mom, can I make videos for your TikTok?" Caleb asked one afternoon. "What kind of videos?" "Like, showing how you make the bags? And maybe talking about why you started the company?" His enthusiasm reminded me why I'd started this journey in the first place. "That sounds perfect, sweetheart." The video Caleb made, titled, "My Mom is a Boss and My Dad Didn't Believe in Her," got 1.2 million views in 24 hours. In it, he explained how he'd watched me work late every night and never understood why Dad seemed annoyed about it. Emma wrote a school essay called "My Mom is a Boss" that made me cry happy tears. When her teacher asked if she could share it with the PTA, I said yes. Somehow, Lori Greiner saw the essay on the school's Facebook page and shared it on LinkedIn. It got 100,000 shares in one day. My children believed in me, even when their father didn't. A week later, I discovered something that made my blood boil. While organizing business documents for my accountant, I found paperwork that Dave had filed with the state, attempting to register Cedar and Stitch under his name. He'd used our old tax documents to try to claim ownership of my business, probably hoping to cash in on my sudden success. I marched into his home office and slammed the papers on his desk. "What is this?" Dave barely glanced up. "Insurance. I was protecting our family's interests. You tried to steal my business." "I tried to secure our future," he said, finally looking at me. "This whole thing could disappear tomorrow." I pulled out another folder. The prenup we'd signed 15 years ago when Dave was paranoid about protecting his bank salary. The document clearly stated that any business built independently, either spouse, would remain sole property of that spouse. "Read Section 12, I said. Dave's face went white as he read his own signature on the document that protected my company from his greed. "You can't touch Cedar and Stitch," I said quietly. "You didn't believe in me, so now you can't own me." That weekend, Dave tried to make amends. He brought home roses, expensive wine, and takeout from my favorite restaurant. "Let's start over," he said, lighting candles on our dining room table. "I was wrong to doubt you." The kids were at my sister's house for the night. It was just us, sitting across from each other like strangers. "I'm proud of you," he continued. "Really proud." I studied his face in the candlelight. 2 months ago, those words would have meant everything to me. Now they felt empty. "You broke something, Dave," I said softly. "Not just between us, but in our kids. You taught them it was okay to laugh at their mother's dreams." "I can fix this," he insisted. "We can fix this." I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope. "I don't think we can." Dave opened it with shaking hands. "Divorce papers filed that morning. You broke the marriage when you made our kids laugh at me," I said. "That was the last thing we built together." I blew out the candles and went upstairs to pack. My lawyer, Patricia, was a sharp woman who specialized in protecting entrepreneurs' assets during divorce proceedings. She reviewed my case with the efficiency of someone who'd seen this story before. "Your prenup is ironclad," she confirmed. "He has no claim to Cedar and Stitch or its profits." "What about the house?" "Joint asset, but given his attempt to fraudulently claim your business and the evidence of emotional infidelity, you're in a strong position." I showed her the screenshots of Dave's texts with Kira, plus bank statements showing he'd used our joint account for business dinners that were actually dates. "He used marital funds for his affair," Patricia noted. "You can claim reimbursement for those expenses." Dave's lawyer called that afternoon. Apparently, Dave was starting to realize he'd underestimated the wife he'd spent years dismissing. "Mrs. Monroe," Patricia said after she hung up, "your husband wants to negotiate." "Good," I replied. "He can negotiate with you. I'm done talking to him directly." Dave cornered me in the garage one evening while I was working on a new design. "I want to invest in Cedar and Stitch," he said, "for the kids' future." I didn't look up from my sewing machine. "No. Rachel, be reasonable. I'm their father. You're also the man who called their mother's work a hobby." "I was wrong," he exploded. "I admit it, but we can still fix this as a family business." Now I did look up. Dave, you spent 2 years trying to convince me I was wasting my time. You made jokes about my dreams at dinner parties. You flirted with another woman while I was building something beautiful. Your name will never be on my company. His face twisted with frustration. You're being vindictive. I'm being protective, I corrected. Cedar and Stitch is mine. It always was. Dave stormed out, slamming the garage door behind him. Later that night, Caleb knocked on my bedroom door. Mom, are you okay? I hugged him tight. I'm better than okay, sweetheart. I'm free. The invitation came through Lori's team. A Moms in Business Summit in Seattle wanted me as their keynote speaker. 500 women entrepreneurs, all building dreams while balancing family life. Standing on that stage, looking out at hundreds of faces that reflected my own journey, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Belonging. They told me my business was a hobby, I said into the microphone. They said I'd get tired of it. But here's what I learned. When someone calls your dream a hobby, they're really revealing their own limitations. The audience erupted in applause. Women stood up, cheering, recognizing their own struggles in my story. After my speech, a woman in a sharp blue suit approached me. I'm Jennifer Walsh from Nordstrom, she said, handing me her business card. We'd like to discuss carrying Cedar and Stitch in our stores. I stared at the card in disbelief. Nordstrom, one of the biggest department store chains in the country. Yes, I managed. I'd love to discuss that. Everything was moving faster than I'd ever imagined possible. Caleb started a business club at his middle school, using Cedar and Stitch as a case study for entrepreneurship. When he asked if he could interview me for their first meeting, my heart melted. Mom, he said, setting up his phone to record, what made you believe in your business when nobody else did? Because I wasn't building it for them, I replied. I was building it for me, and for you and Emma. I wanted to show you that when someone believes in you, anything is possible. His eyes got watery. I'm sorry I laughed that night at dinner. You were following your dad's lead, I said gently. That's what kids do. But now you know, it's okay to believe in people's dreams, even when they seem impossible. That weekend, Caleb presented my interview to his business club. The video got shared by parents, then teachers, then local news. A few days later, he came to me with a notebook full of sketches. Mom, can I design a line of backpacks for teens? Like, eco-friendly ones that look cool? I looked at his drawings. They were actually good, creative and practical. Let's talk about it, I said. Partners? His smile could have lit up the entire house. Dave's life was unraveling as quickly as mine was coming together. Kira had seen the Shark Tank episode and felt like a fool for getting involved with a married man who'd portrayed himself as unappreciated. She dumped him via text. Saw your wife on TV. She seems amazing. You're an idiot. His attempt to claim ownership of my business had also gotten back to his boss at the bank. Apparently, trying to fraudulently register someone else's trademark wasn't a good look for a financial professional. He wasn't fired, but he was reassigned to a smaller branch with a lower salary. Meanwhile, I was finalizing the purchase of a beautiful eco-modern home for me and the kids. Cedar-paneled walls, skylights, and a dedicated studio space for my designs. One afternoon, I saw Dave sitting in his car outside a coffee shop where the kids and I were celebrating Emma's A+ on her math test. He watched us laughing together through the window, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He'd made his choices. Now he had to live with them. Moving day felt like rebirth. The kids ran through our new house, claiming bedrooms and exploring every corner. The studio space in the back was flooded with natural light and perfect for photographing inventory. This place feels like you, Mom, Emma said, spinning around in the main living area. She was right. Everything about it reflected who I'd become. Clean lines, sustainable materials, purposeful design. It was the opposite of the cluttered, tense house where Dave and I had pretended to be happy. That evening, we had our first dinner in the new dining room. Caleb showed us the business plan he'd written for his backpack line. Emma drew pictures of handbag designs inspired by her favorite animals. Are you happy we moved? I asked them as we cleaned up dishes. Yeah, Caleb said immediately. It's quiet here. Like peaceful quiet, not scary quiet. I knew exactly what he meant. For the first time in years, our home felt like a sanctuary instead of a battlefield. That night, I worked on designs until midnight. not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The day Cedar and Stitch's first retail store opened in downtown Portland, I stood outside looking at my name on the storefront and couldn't quite believe it was real. Becca had flown in from San Diego for the grand opening. Seeing her and the kids gathered around me for the ribbon-cutting ceremony felt like the perfect culmination of everything we'd built together. "Speech," someone called from the small crowd that had gathered. I'd prepared remarks, but standing there with scissors in my hand, I decided to speak from the heart instead. "This store represents every woman who's been told her dreams are too small or too big," I said. "It represents every kid who watches their mom work late into the night and wonders if it'll ever pay off. Today, we're proving that it does." Caleb stepped forward with the ribbon. "Ready, Mom?" We cut it together, and the crowd cheered as customers flooded in. The first person through the door was Becca, carrying one of my original prototypes. The second was Emma's teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez. The third was a woman I didn't recognize, but she looked familiar. "I work at your husband's bank," she whispered as she walked past. "I've been following your story. You're incredible." 2 months later, Dave walked past his coworker Sarah's desk at the bank and stopped short. Hanging from her chair was a Cedar and Stitch tote bag, the Portland pine design that had been featured in Vogue. "Nice bag," he said, trying to sound casual. "Thanks," Sarah beamed. "It's from that amazing company, Cedar and Stitch. The founder was on Shark Tank. Such an inspiring story about following your dreams despite unsupportive people." Dave's face burned as he walked to his own desk. His ex-wife's success was literally hanging in his workplace, a daily reminder of everything he'd lost through his own arrogance. That evening, he drove past our old house now sold, and then past my new place. Through the windows, he could see warm light and the kids doing homework at a kitchen table that looked nothing like the formal dining set we'd owned together. He sat in his car for a long time, watching the life that continued beautifully without him. His phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Rachel Monroe tagged in article, "From Garage to Glory, the Cedar and Stitch success story." He didn't open it. He already knew how it ended. 6 months later, I walked onto the TEDx Portland stage wearing a blazer I'd designed myself. Sustainable wool in Cedar and Stitch's signature forest green. The kids sat in the front row next to Becca and Lori, who'd flown in specifically for this moment. "When they mock your dream," I began, looking out at the sea of faces, "don't argue, don't defend. Don't waste energy trying to convince them they're wrong." I paused, thinking of all the dinner table jokes, all the dismissive comments, all the times I'd felt small. Instead, build your dreams so loudly they can hear it from wherever they are when it succeeds. Build it so beautifully that their doubt becomes irrelevant. Build it so authentically that it speaks for itself. The audience was completely silent. My husband told our children that my business was a hobby I'd get tired of. He was wrong about the hobby part. But he was right about one thing. I did get tired. I got tired of asking for permission to dream. I got tired of making myself smaller to make others comfortable. I got tired of hiding my light under someone else's shadow. I looked down at Caleb and Emma, both beaming up at me. So I stopped asking for permission and started giving myself everything I needed to succeed. And that made all the difference. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. As I walked off stage, I felt the weight of every struggle, every late night, every moment of doubt lift from my shoulders. I'd proven to myself, to my children, and to everyone watching that dreams don't need permission to come true. They just need patience, persistence, and the courage to keep sewing, even when the whole world tells you to put down the thread.